Here are 100 reasons why global conflict and thermonuclear war are closer than at any point in human history. My friends, I implore you to kick back and buckle up, because I'm going to be presenting this information to you in a way today that is going to give you clear perspective on the imminent dangers we all face. And I assure you, if you or anybody else who watches this is under any sort of illusion of the gravity of the situation in terms of the specter of nuclear conflict looming overhead, this, I hope, if this doesn't do it, I don't know what will, but it's going to completely dispel and deconstruct any sort of normalcy bias you might be stricken with. And it's important that we take this 30,000-foot view every once in a while, because if you're like me and you keep pace with the day-to-day media cycle, you don't see the big changes because you're so incrementally close to the problem. But I'm going to put it all out there on the table for you today. The following has happened in just the past 20 months. Most of this has happened in the past year. None of this was the case 2 years ago. Are you ready? Are you sitting down? Let's get to it. We have one of the first prerequisites to a thermonuclear conflict is a high-intensity war in Europe. We've checked that box off. Financial decoupling around the world. Remember that old saying? When goods don't cross borders, armies will. We have multipolarity emerging on many financial fronts. We have the largest ever NATO exercises, including nuclear war drills happening in 2023 in multiple locations around the world. And all of these things can be fact-checked, cross-referenced. Go and do your own research. I guarantee you every single one of these data points is 100% true. We have Russian war mobilization, expansion of their military to over 2 million men, as well as drastic increases in military spending. We have Russia installing multi-layered air defense systems in Moscow, their main capital, and many other large urban centers within Russia. This is all new, okay? Just last year, if people would have heard about that, people would have been panicking because they would have thought that this meant that nuclear war was imminent. Now, we've just become acclimated to the fact. We have multiple drone attacks deep inside Russia, including on the Kremlin, on Russian airports that contain nuclear bombers, assassination attempts and successful assassinations, I should add, of high-profile politicians and pundits, as well as attacks or assassination attempts on Vladimir Putin himself. We have Russian overhauling their strategic nuclear arsenal, unveiling new weapon systems like the Kinzhal and Zircon hypersonic missile systems, the Sarmat-2 Satan missile ICBMs, the Poseidon 100 megaton tsunami-inducing nuclear weapon. We have the Avant-Garde glide vehicles, the S-500 Prometheus system, which is an anti-satellite system. We have Russian overhauling their strategic bunker complexes and their fallout shelters. Many European countries have followed in suit. We have North Korea recording record missile tests in 2023, as well as a recent successful intercontinental ballistic missile test. We also have North Korea's mass proliferation of nuclear weapons. They have a hell of a lot more nukes than they had just a few years ago. We also have the North Koreans successfully launching their first spy satellite. The Korean border in the past month has become fully remilitarized. And this is all happening during very provocative decapitation strike exercises being conducted by Japan, South Korea, and the United States. The nuclear rhetoric has reached an all-time high on the Korean Peninsula. We have the mass exodus of Russian diplomats from NATO countries and vice versa. We have consulates and embassies closing. We have the evacuation of embassies in Lebanon. We have level 4 travel advisories issued by the State Department to multiple countries within the Middle East. We have the USA planned seizure of $300 billion in Russian assets. The Russians say if the USA goes through with this, they are going to withdraw any sort of diplomatic missions they have to that country. And that is one of the precursors, the major precursors to a high-intensity conflict, is the removal of any sort of diplomacy. We have the U.S. nuclear submarines that are currently deployed to South Korea. Once again, this is all new. I think they also deployed some nuclear bombers to there, if I'm not mistaken, or they did periodically. We also have Iran threatening to wipe Israel off the map in recent days if attacked. This, of course, all post-October 7th. We have the first ever use of hypersonic weapons in Ukraine in the past 2 years. We have the first nuclear public service announcement in New York City since the Cold War. Remember that terribly pathetic advice that the government was issuing people? We have the first ever full-blown nuclear war drills taking place in Russia this year. We have the first nationwide emergency alert system test in both the United States and the United Kingdom. Coincidentally, that emergency alert system test in the USA coincided with a similar test that was conducted in Russia on the same day. We also have the USA government stockpiling acute radiation sickness medication. We have Belarus taking full delivery of nuclear weapons. Wow. We have the record incursions into Taiwanese airspace by the Chinese in 2023. We have Zaporozhye nuclear power plant as well as numerous other power plants in Ukraine and Russia coming under attack recently. We also have Russian missiles falling on Romanian territory, of course, inadvertently, the Russians claim. Romania, in response to this, is building up bunkers and ramping up their own military air defense and mobilization. We have the Russian military alliance with Iran, North Korea, and China deepening, taking weapons from most of those countries. This is not something you would have seen 2 years ago, okay? We have attacks on critical infrastructure, hybrid warfare in full effect, including, and not limited to, the Crimean Bridge, the Nord Stream attacks, attacks on transformers, power grids, other gas pipelines, underwater sea cables. We have attacks into Russian territory by Ukrainian partisans. This in of itself, this one data point, likely would have elicited a major response had it happened at any other time post-2023. But because we've become so acclimatized to the current state of things, it's not a big shocker to people. But it should not be understated, okay, that NATO-backed groups have invaded Russian territory this year. The USA updated their nuclear doctrine in 2022 in their nuclear posture review to allow for the first strike, for the first use of nuclear weapons in a modern war. We also have the abandonment or suspension of any and all nuclear treaties. That is completely insane. We have the doomsday clock issued by the International Bulletin for Atomic Scientists, moving closer to midnight than ever before in history, 90 seconds to midnight. We have the abandonment of the Conventional Forces Treaty in Europe. We have Germany remilitarizing the Baltics in response to this. For the first time ever since World War II, German troops are going to be on Russia's border. Unbelievable. We have Finland this year inventorying 50,000 nuclear bomb shelters. We have the Chinese militarization ramping up. Xi Jinping urging the military to prepare for war with the West. This is the biggest military buildup in China's history during peacetime. We have the U.S. militarization of Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines building new bases all over the place. We have NATO building a 300,000 strong combat readiness force ready to be deployed in case of war with Russia. We have borders closing between Belarus, Poland, and Ukraine. We have the militarization of the Suwalki corridor, which leads from Belarus to the Kaliningrad exclave, a very strategic place for the Russians. We also have the U.S. military passing the largest ever military budget for 2024. However, it should be noted that this does not factor in inflation. But when you factor in the spending that has been given to Ukraine that is outside the defense budget, then it starts to look pretty bad. We also have the largest ever NATO cybersecurity exercises conducted. Speaking of cyber attacks, widespread cyber attacks on critical infrastructure across numerous countries around the world. We have all countries, Russia, USA, NATO, North Korea, running nuclear war simulation exercises in 2023. We have a 100,000 troop strong nuclear exercise run by NATO called Global Thunder just a few months ago. Absolutely insane. We have travel advisories to Russia and the USA issued quite frequently. We have the Serbian war threat heating up this year. And of course, a possible botched coup color revolution attempt in just the past week alone. We have Russia loading its doomsday seed vault this year. These are all videos that we've done throughout the year. We have nuclear sensors being installed throughout Ukraine by the US government in order to detect if there was ever a nuclear explosion. We have nuclear personal protective equipment distributed, and training, I should add, to Ukrainian and Russian militaries respectively in 2023. We have increased sightings of Vladimir Putin in close proximity to the nuclear briefcase, as well as Joe Biden. This has become more visible recently. We're also seeing noticeable increases in NORAD activity, i.e. DEFCON activity, over the USA post-China balloon incident. Then, of course, there was the China balloon incidents. Remember, stratospheric balloons can be used as a deployment system, not only for surveillance, ISR tech, but also nuclear weapons and EMP weapons. We have China's nuclear proliferation goals. They want to achieve parity with the Russians and the United States. We have drastic increases in military spending by all countries in the world through 2024. We have gunpowder shortages and shortages of conventional munitions. This all increases the likelihood that countries will resort to the use of nuclear weapons when they have no other option. We have the European Parliament declaring Russia a terrorist state, and Vladimir Putin declared a war criminal by the International Criminal Court. That data point alone would have likely elicited a lot of fear just a couple of years ago. Nowadays, no big deal. October 7th happened, okay? Attacks on the Israeli Dimona nuclear facility from numerous belligerents, including the IRGC-backed militias, the Houthis, and Hamas, who frequently threaten to attack Israel's nuclear facilities. Now, Israel has something called the Samson option. If they perceive these wars to be an existential risk, they will utilize the nuclear option. And right now, in the past 48 hours, the defense minister, I believe it's Gallant, said that they are facing a war on 7 fronts. And they've used a lot of ammunition already. And quite frankly, I don't know how they're going to have enough ammo to fight all the people that they're going to need to fight. We have numerous drone attacks without using nuclear weapons, that is. Numerous drone attacks on Russia's nuclear triad. Okay? This data point alone should have brought us to the brink a long time ago. We're talking about attacks on Engels Air Base, the destruction of nuclear-capable bombers, warships, and submarines, the deployment by Russia of MiG-31s armed with nuclear-capable Kinzhal missiles to the Black Sea, all new in the past few months, the collapse of the grain corridor. People forget that. I mean, it's so easy to forget, right, when so much has been happening. Complete collapse of the grain corridor deal. The Russians are mining the Black Sea. Russia brought down that US drone last year. We also have the UK preparing to send warships into the region to police the grain corridor, if they can make it through the Bosphorus Strait. We have the USA to stop importing nuclear fuel from Russia in 2024. This is why they ordered triple the amount of nuclear fuel throughout 2023, because they know they're probably going to be going to war with Russia in the future, and they got to get that nuclear fuel because it's a special kind of fuel that the nuclear power plants in the USA run on. We have NATO sending Patriot missile systems, HIMARS, tanks, nuclear-capable F-16s and long-range cruise missiles, as well as Miscs, as well as NATO advisors, high-ranking officials, commanders, and special forces, all currently involved in actively killing Russian soldiers. You can't make this up. I mean, I thought seeing German Leopard tanks coming over the horizon and engaging with the Russians, I thought that was going to be it. But here we go. Over 120 attacks on U.S. bases in the Middle East since October 7th. We have House Resolution 559 permitting the U.S. and Israeli military intervention in Iran if they perceive that Iran might be close to acquiring nuclear weapons. And remember, in this same period of time, the Iranian nuclear deal completely fell through. Just the past week, Iran declared that they've tripled enriched uranium output. Okay, you can see the writing is on the wall. The clock is ticking. You better start prepping. Gold buying from central banks approaches record levels. The U.S. is committing to a complete multi-trillion-dollar overhaul of their nuclear program. The U.S. has already deployed new tactical nukes to Europe this year. The U.S. plans mass deployment of nuclear-capable F-35s to the United Kingdom. They're building the infrastructure right now as we speak, all of which will be nuclear-capable. NATO and the United States are also enhancing their fighter jet capabilities to take off from unconventional runways. Because in the case of a nuclear war, you want to distribute your bombers, and a lot of NATO planes have a hard time taking off from anything except special runways. They want to make sure that they can deploy these systems from a highway, say. We have the U.S. unveiling their new nuclear-capable stealth bomber. All of this has happened this year. This is crazy. The U.S. fires their highest-ranking officers at a nuclear base, I think it was in Minot, over incompetence. And this was after the Chinese balloon fiasco. We have massive, record-breaking non-NATO military exercises in pretty much every war theater. We have unprecedented mobilization of warships to the Middle East. Half the damn Navy is there. Now you have a coalition. Never before seen this amount of warships, even during the biggest wars that were fought in that region. We have Russia increasing nuclear submarine deployments. Russia expanding its militarization of the Arctic as well as running nuclear exercises in the Arctic. We have the United States just in the past 2 weeks arbitrarily claiming more Arctic territory in response to these moves by Russia. We have Finland joining NATO. Then, just a few weeks after that, shutting the border with Russia and immediately welcoming in the United States, giving them full access to their military bases, effectively putting the United States right smack dab on the border with St. Petersburg. And did I mention, I think I mentioned that they were running military exercises. I didn't mention that, but NATO is conducting exercises in the Baltic, deploying multiple aircraft carriers, simulating blockading the Gulf of Finland and the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad. This is just crazy. We have Russia now consolidating their military under a new command around the St. Petersburg region, and they've now begun militarizing the border with Finland. We have the first ever touchdown of a stealth bomber in Europe this year. We have cyber attacks on critical infrastructure ramping up, as I indicated. And we have the Wagner leader who was quoted as saying, World War III is coming and we need to prepare for it. He was assassinated right after the whole failed coup attempt. Most people forget that was just this year. We have UK and German military commanders both announcing preparations for a direct war with Russia. Germany saying they may have to declare a state of emergency. We have tensions between Moldova and Transnistria intensifying. Remember, in Transnistria, the largest warehouse of Soviet-era munitions in the world, currently resides there, and everybody is pretty starved for ammo at this point in time. Romania and Poland continue on the path to war mobilization. Poland passes a new law which is going to make it easier to transition from peacetime mobilization to full-blown war mobilization. Ukraine claims to aspire to mobilize an additional 500,000 troops, although the government is kind of waffling on the issue. The proof is in the pudding. They're throwing guys in the backs of vans, whoever they can find on the street, basically. The counteroffensive has apparently failed, and both the EU and the USA, Joe Biden has been quoted on numerous occasions saying, using very threatening rhetoric, saying that if the Ukraine fails in whatever sort of mission they have to destroy the Russians or to keep the Russians at bay, then we are going to have to send our own troops to fight and die on their behalf. Can you believe that? China is deploying more naval forces around Taiwan. It seems like they're unveiling a new aircraft carrier every other few months. We have Venezuela opening up a new front in that direction. We have the increased nuclear and non-nuclear bomber intercepts around the world, namely in around the Alaska region and in the northern parts of Europe. We have China, the United States, and Russia all preparing to recommence nuclear testing according to satellite and OSINT observations. That's all mainstream news. We have de-dollarization ramping up, not only in terms of the BRICS rhetoric, but in a very quantifiable, measurable way. De-dollarization is well underway. The only thing potentially holding it up at this point is a failing euro. We have nuclear information sharing ceasing between Russia and the United States after the de facto suspension of the New START treaty, which is simply not being honored anymore, not being checked. We have depleted uranium rounds in Ukraine. Most people forget about this. This was a hot button issue at one point. Now it's just there, and it's a red line that's been crossed. And the more red lines we cross, the closer we get to that fateful day. Russia has now threatened to destroy NATO airstrips if F-16s deploy from there, and F-16s have now arrived in Ukraine, is the word on the street. And people forget that the USA just suspended exports of guns and ammo as a result of shortages. And of course, gold has reached all-time highs. If you ain't prepping, you're stupid. That's all I got to say. Wow. That was a mouthful. I don't know what more to say. I don't know what more to do. Just a heads up, here at CanadianPreparedness.com, the final hours of the Boxing Day sale, 15% off, store-wide. Capitalize, carpe diem, seize the day while you can. Seize the opportunity to load up on survival food, survival gear, survival trinkets, water filtration systems. Just stock up, stock up, stock up, okay? Because no matter what lens, what prism you're looking at this through, whether it's commerce, cyber warfare, climate, chaos, conflict, or whatever sort of contagion they throw at us next, we're in for a wild, wild ride. So buckle up, because 2024, oh yeah, I forgot about Civil War. There's that too. Anyways, guys, just keep on prepping.